Canada has never seen a budget day quite like this.
Order.
It's the new political dynamic. The finance minister trying to push through the SNC-Lavalin controversy.
It was a good reminder of what's...
The Conservatives howling in outrage over the Liberals shutting down of the Justice Committee to deny Jody Wilson-Raybould another chance to testify. The Conservative point was loud and clear, and eventually Morneau was able to make his, a pre-election pitch to Canada's largest group of voters, millennials.
We also, though, know that millennials still see that the possibility of getting into the home market is very challenging.
There's new measures to help first-time buyers get that first house. Morneau is also cutting interest rates on student loans and boosting student job placements to help them break into the job market. But it's not just millennials. There's also help for older workers whose jobs are at risk from technological change.
Our government believes that Canadians at all stages of their working lives should have the opportunity to learn new skills to take control of the future.
Morneau's solution is money for training programs and paid time off using EI, a bottom line of $1,000 and 4 weeks off over 4 years to upgrade skills.
This budget is not a serious fiscal plan for the country.
The Conservative caucus walked out of the speech, ignoring skills training to focus on SNC.
In the days ahead, we will continue to highlight this government's cover-up agenda.
It's disappointing that the Conservatives actually don't care and don't know what's in the actual budget. We've worked very hard to deliver for the middle class.
This is a budget that gives crumbs to Canadians when this government has already given the entire pie to the wealthiest.
With the Conservatives out of the chamber, Morneau spelled out how he would continue the Liberal pattern of big spending to help ordinary Canadians, from millennials to low-income seniors.
We're enhancing the Guaranteed Income Supplement earnings exemption so that seniors who wish to work can keep more of their pay and benefits.
This was supposed to be the year the Liberals balanced the budget, but there are deficits as far as the eye can see. And that's the message to voters. It's a choice to live with the deficits or live without the programs. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now let's look closer at some of those big budget promises, starting with help for those millennials trying to enter Canada's housing market. Cameron McIntosh examines how today's proposal will impact the buyers.
So here in this condo, this is our living room. It opens up in the back.
The biggest investment of her life so far. At 23 years old, Brianna LaFantasy is just getting into Winnipeg's housing market.
It's a little bit harder than I expected, a little bit scary.
With a tight budget of just $200,000.
Finding a home within my price point that is structurally sound that I would even consider moving into.
This budget bumps up the amount buyers can take from an RSP to $35,000. It also offers a shared equity mortgage, up to 10% of the value of a mortgage to be paid back over time or when the home is sold. What's unclear, though, is what happens if the home goes up or down in value. And it's only on mortgages up to $480,000. That may work in a mid-sized market like Winnipeg, not so much in Canada's two most expensive markets, Vancouver and Toronto.
The view here is phenomenal.
Where 31-year-old buyer Mauricio Valderrama can tell you, $480 doesn't get you in the door.
If there's something that I can take advantage of, I'll consider it, but for what I've seen, it won't make an impact.
There are fears more lending could just drive up prices more.
First-time homebuyers do tend to have a relatively high debt load relative to income. We're going to be putting more people in that high debt-to-income bracket.
Oh, wow. This is very nice.
Back in Winnipeg, the main hang-up for LaFantasy and her agent, what exactly are the government's terms?
Justin Trudeau wouldn't be quite your roommate, but he would be a co-owner of your home.
Right, and I'm not sure how I feel about that.
The federal government says details of the plan are still being worked out, but is committing to have it in place by September 1st. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Now to today's single biggest line item, and it reflects a core Trudeau government priority, and that's reconciliation with Canada's Indigenous peoples. The CBC's Katie Simpson looks at the significance of the big spend worth more than $8 billion over 5 years.
That there is no relationship more important to us
than the one we share with Indigenous people.
Rebuilding that relationship hasn't been easy for the Prime Minister, but he's promising to continue the work by making reconciliation the single largest investment in his budget. Over the next 5 years, Crown Indigenous Relations gets $4.8 billion, mostly to pay for settling historic wrongs, including land claims. Indigenous Services gets $3.2 billion to eliminate boil water advisories and improve child health care. On top of that, over the next 6 years, more than $1 billion in loans for legal fees for settlement negotiations will be forgiven.
We have been focused on reconciliation with Indigenous peoples since day one.
The Liberals made similar promises in 2015, prompting a record high turnout of Indigenous voters. But since that election, a lack of consultation about pipelines and the rise and fall of Jody Wilson-Raybould as the first Indigenous Justice Minister have become issues that have frustrated some in First Nations communities. Despite those tensions, the Liberals hope this budget is seen as another step toward reconciliation.
So the investments we're seeing here are simply to bring First Nations kids up to the standard of other children in Canada. And even there, it still falls short.
The National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations says more work needs to be done, but
I see the movement in the right way. We just got to maintain the momentum now.
The AFN says Indigenous voters helped flip about 20 ridings in the last election. Given that swing power, it hopes all federal parties develop strong Indigenous platforms. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Ottawa.